Welcome back to Second Breakfast in our ongoing Summerween series, celebrating hot weather and horror movies by bringing you the best thoughts, theories, and literary analysis all summer long.
I'm so proud of you for getting through that entire intro. Way to go.
First try off the dome.
Which is weird because this isn't actually our first Summerween episode that's coming out, but it's the first one we're recording, so
Exactly.
Lucky you, dear listener.
We have a backlog. So, we got to see 28 Days Later, an anniversary screening. The movie's kind of been off the grid for a while. You haven't been able to rent it. Even digitally, you haven't been able to stream it for a while. And I've always wanted Maggie to see this.
I was so excited. I mean, that concept is always so terrifying to me that, like, I can't access a movie that's been made. Like, I really hate that idea. So when this was showing in Alamo for, like, one night only, or in theaters.
It was national, yeah.
Yeah, we were like, okay, we got to do it. And wow, I really, really enjoyed this. And like, I'm so tired of zombie apocalypse movies and stories. Like, we're all tired of it, I think. But this movie is 23 years old. And so, like, it wasn't tired back then. And I still found it so fresh, though, in 2025.
Exactly. I think fresh is a good word there because it feels so lean. It feels so original and complete. It moves at this fantastic pace. It's thoroughly British.
Yes.
Despite Cillian Murphy pulling it in the Irish direction.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Which are very different things. But yeah.
When I was watching this, there are two things we want to talk about here, just to sort of lay the ground at the beginning. Eventually, we're going to talk about the difference between fast and slow zombies and how they kind of change the themes and the creatures. And
Yes.
I think the momentum of the creature very much changes what kind of thing it is. So we're going to get there. But first, I want to talk about The Walking Dead.
Yeah, you kind of have to at this point. And maybe it's not fair because The Walking Dead, of course, comes after this movie, but I think it's an important cultural touchstone.
Just barely, though. So I looked into this because
okay.
when we were watching the movie and we got out of it, and I was thinking about The Walking Dead because that's the preeminent zombie media of our time. Do you think that's fair at this point?
Yeah, and I think that's like the first zombie thing I really was exposed to.
But there are a lot of plot beats in a certain order that are incredibly similar. The parallels between these two works of fiction are a little staggering. And I'm not, in going through these, I'm not making an accusation. I'm not dumping on one or the other.
Okay.
I'm mostly interested in the similarities and how these works of art, the posture that they have towards these common plot points. I've got 6 I want to play with.
Oh, wow. Because I only remember you saying like 3 or 4 in the car. So this will be fine.
When you write it out, it gets more complicated. So
awesome.
They're in chronological order. So both works start with a lone man waking up in a hospital.
Yes, that's like maybe the most, apart from the actual zombies, it's the most obvious comparison. And the second it happened, I was like, oh, we're doing that.
The slightly weird thing here about the timeline, this movie comes out in 2002.
Yes.
The Walking Dead, the comic, starts in 2003.
Wow. Okay.
So very much of a piece. Culturally, temporally, they're all cutting from the same cloth.
Interesting.
So Lone Man wakes up in the hospital. You either have Cillian Murphy or you have Rick from The Walking Dead. Mm-hmm. There's also a weird detail in that Cillian Murphy's, we're just going to say the actor because it's easier for everyone to remember.
Yeah.
Cillian Murphy's character is a bicycle courier.
Yes.
When you meet Glenn, who's the first guy that Rick meets, he's a delivery boy.
Yeah, pizza delivery guy.
He's the American version of a courier.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
The second one is they quickly have to find a vehicle guy who becomes the surrogate father to the group.
Yes.
You have you have Brendan Gleeson in 28 Days Later, and then you have Dale in The Walking Dead.
That's right.
With the floppy hat who's in Billions.
Yes, and doesn't he have like an RV or something?
Yes, exactly.
Yes, okay.
He has the RV. The next plot beat is the original guy who woke up in the hospital bed. He has to go check in on his family, and then they kind of have to die.
I see.
So Cillian Murphy goes home, finds the parents, and they're dead. Rick goes to find his wife and child, and eventually the wife dies.
Yes.
Then they fall in love with a sword-wielding black woman. Interesting that it happens twice.
Yes, that is interesting. Like, such very specific, too.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I mean, I figure if the machete's big enough, it's basically a sword.
I mean, yeah.
We can squint at it and call those similar plot beats.
It's a long blade. It's not a knife, you know.
It's a long blade. Very technical.
That's what I'm here for.
As the stories shift, I think as they progress, the zombie action becomes slowly displaced by escalating ethical paradoxes.
Yeah, and human conflict. You know,
exactly.
What it ends up becoming is, the humans are the real monsters, which we're tired of by this point, but it's still a really great idea. Like, I think we kind of scoff at that now, but I think that's a little unfair.
Well, we do, because we spent a year and a half going chapter by chapter through The Witcher.
Oh, yes.
But yes, I still think it is a harrowing observation.
Yeah.
If it is built to properly.
Right, because another version of an apocalyptic end of the world story is that we're united by this common fear or a common, disaster. And instead it's like, no, actually we'd become even more divided and self-centered than ever before. I think that's always an interesting take.
Thomas Hobbes in The State of Nature.
Right.
I mean, there's even that line where Rick screams, "We are the Walking Dead."
That's right, yeah.
Both of these stories get to that extreme.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the last one. This is the sixth parallel I wanted to play with here. Because the highest moments of horror in both of these stories, and I know maybe this is subjective, so let me know if you disagree in the comments.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, we watched, I think it was 7 seasons of The Walking Dead. We didn't quite finish it.
We have not finished it, yeah, because it started to fall apart, yeah.
But I viscerally remember certain moments from that show.
Sure, yeah.
The fake out with Judith during the governor plotline. I remember exactly where I was when that happened.
Yeah, looking at the car seat, yeah.
Yes, but for me, number one, the most visceral moment of both of these stories is a twist about sexual assault perpetrated by other survivors.
Yes.
And this is the interesting thing. It's not just that the plot beat is in common, it's how the stories reckon with and respond to that development. Both stories answer these threats of assault with brutal, savage murder. For example, Jim, Cillian Murphy, brains most of the paramilitary soldiers to save Hannah and Selena. In The Walking Dead, this is the moment where Rick and Daryl and a couple of our main people, and they're stopped by this kind of biker gang raider group.
I remember
and
this.
one of the guys tries to assault Carl.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And Rick is being restrained. And that scene ends with Rick ripping out the guy's throat with his teeth.
It's incredible. Yeah, in both of these moments, not only is it incredibly violent, but it's like Rick and Jim are both almost becoming and can be mistaken for one of the monsters that they're trying to survive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And after that, neither story explicitly condemns the characters for their murders. In fact, the other characters in those respective scenes understand what they've done and barely flinch at it.
It's kind of the opposite of what happens in Game of Thrones when Jon Snow
That's exactly what I had in my notes.
Goes too far,
Yes.
beating up Ramsay.
At the end of Battle of the Bastards.
And you're like, what? No, he should absolutely have kept going.
Including the last season, that is my least favorite moment of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
But to keep it to Walking Dead and 28 Days Later, what do you make of that specifically that last similarity and how the characters react in the moment?
I really like it. I think this is something I love across art and history is, if you ignore the possibility that one person was influenced by the other, like we're not talking about that. I'm interested when humanity is like repeatedly focusing on and portraying and fixating on certain themes or ideas, because that tells me that we've always been the same. And I know that these two things are so similar in terms of timeline, but if you think about one being American and one being British, I think that's really key to help distinguish them. It's that even in these two very different, the UK and the US are very similar culturally, especially in like comparison to the rest of the planet, but still they're very distinct ways of life and thinking and mentalities. The British mentality is very different from the American mentality. And the fact that both of these stories have had so many similarities in like not only in theme but also in like the way that those themes are played out and experimented with, that's really interesting. And I like that sort of common thing among humanity that's hard to shake. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, and those characters, like you said before, I wanted to circle back to that because these characters, Rick and Jim, are driven to their most animalistic, to the point that Jim is confused with a zombie.
Yes.
For a second, I forget her name, Selena thinks that he might be an infected.
Yeah, she almost kills him.
Because of the way he brutalizes these guys. Mm-hmm. I love that they're driven to their most inhumane to do something that kind of reaffirms their humanity.
Yes.
Something that I find almost comforting. The way these guys resolve this problem, it kind of restores my faith in humanity.
Well, and it's in response to something done by another human, not by one of the monsters. Like, nobody is going animal on a zombie. They're going animal on a fellow human.
Yes.
And that's really interesting.
And I think it matters more in these stories because, like we said before, the arc of both tales is all of the zombie action being replaced by ethical stage plays.
Yeah.
I mean, Walking Dead being a serialized show, it kind of becomes one-act plays of ethical dramas and questions.
Sure, yeah.
So to foreground ethics in your story for that long and then have someone brutally murder another survivor and for it to feel vindicated and just. I think that speaks to a very particular sensibility of that, like you're talking about that kind of Western UK and US early 2000s. I don't know exactly what to make of it, but I'm so interested in the fact that these stories land in exactly the same place.
And I think what's interesting about both of these stories, and maybe it's not fair because again we haven't seen all of The Walking Dead, but from what I have seen,
I've read about the end.
Yeah,
I know what happens.
Like both of these stories do, even though they are really playing with these moral and ethical dilemmas and ideas, I don't think at any point they're ever like arguing for or like trying to put forth a specific message, or it's not a morality play, right? So it's not like at the end they're saying, well, yeah, you should, rip out a guy's throat if he tries to attack your son. Like that's not what they're saying. It's not like this is the way you're supposed to be. It's more like this is what could happen and could play out if something this extreme did happen. This is the way that humans are.
They're real stories. They're not proselytizing. They're not puppet shows.
And they encourage us to think about, what would I do in this situation? Am I, I'm so, I'm like fist pumping at the screen when Rick tears the guy's throat out, but also like what a horrible thing to do. And like, how is that any different from what other people are trying to do to survive?
Yes.
And so then it makes you think, and that's what's really interesting.
And yeah, I'm not ascribing authorial intent based on how the characters react to something in a scene.
No.
That's a dangerous road that we never go down. But
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because these are incredibly wary characters. I'm thinking of Michonne and Selena specifically in their kind of companion roles because they are the canaries in the coal mine. They're the finger to the wind, scanning the horizon. And every time we meet a new group of survivors in either story, they're usually the most suspicious character.
Yes, no, I don't know about this. Yeah.
And I'm interested in the fact that neither of them becomes suspicious of Jim or Rick after that moment.
That's true.
Because
I don't remember that happening. Yeah.
The shoe that drops on The Walking Dead is every time we meet a new group of survivors, these are the only good people who survived. And then 3 episodes later, you find out they've got like
they're actually
a
horrible.
cockfighting ring of human zombies in the basement, and then they're not good
evil
anymore, and we have to escape. It's interesting that they never turn on Rick or Jim.
Yeah.
Because of doing this kind of savage thing that if you play it a different way, could be them showing their true colors and they're as bad as the animals.
Right. And they're like, oh shit, never mind.
But it's not that.
Right, because I think for both cases, they are but they are also emotionally invested in what the Jim or Rick is fighting for and is doing these things for. Like for Michonne, of course, she has also grown to care for Carl, and he's part of her troop, and like that's really important to her, and so that makes sense. And I think for Selena, it's Jim trying to save her and the young girl Hannah, I think is her name.
Yes,
and like again, they're both kind of united by this common care and love for a child. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
They're doing an inhuman thing that reasserts their humanity.
Yes.
Almost reestablishes and defends their humanity. It's another kind of ethical paradox that we're tossing into the mix here. And I found the similarities fascinating.
I love that.
The other thing I want to play with in this episode is just a more generalized, we've never talked about zombies on the show before.
Well, because when we were on our way to the movie, we were talking about, and we were like, we really haven't seen that many zombie movies and shows. Like obviously The Walking Dead. And then what else?
Last of Us, you mentioned.
The Last of Us, right? Zombieland is what one I've seen. And
don't disrespect the horror comedy. That's a valid subgenre.
No, right. I'm just saying I don't remember it very well. But like other than that, that's kind of it. And like Scooby-Doo Zombie Island,
we caught part of Night of the Living Dead on TV one time.
Yes.
It didn't do much for either of us.
No, it was the very beginning and we just weren't into it.
Zombies aren't really our thing.
No.
But I think there's a kind of a central divide within this creature subgenre that we can play with, because it's not just about creature design, which we also love talking about.
Yeah.
But it gets into some of the themes. And I think that's where we really like to live.
Okay.
So I'm going to kind of parse the difference between fast zombies and slow zombies for a second, just because I wrote it out in the notes. Feel free to jump in whenever you want.
Okay, great.
I was trying to really distinguish these two types. Why does it matter whether their locomotion speed is quick or slow? And I think it really does matter.
Yeah.
Because fast zombie versus slow zombie. A fast zombie, especially in things like 28 Days Later, makes me think about, oh, these are people infected by a virus. They feel rabid, like you talked about before. They feel like animals. Versus a slow zombie feels like it's shambling. It makes me think about decomposition. It makes me think of a corpse, not an animal.
And it makes me think about death. Well, that's the other thing about 28 Days Later is I don't think the infected have actually died. They're not reanimated dead bodies. They are actually just humans that have become infected by a virus, like versus in The Walking Dead where they actually have to die and then they are dead bodies reanimated. But still, they feel so much like zombies in 28 Days Later, and I think that's how you have to label them. That's the category you have to put this in. But that is really interesting. And the slow ones do make you really think about death.
And neither of them talk. I think that's probably the golden rule in a zombie movie.
They
no talking.
No.
Not to quote Arrested Development, but they no touching. Never mind.
No touching.
But the way they express themselves is also interesting. When you think of a slow zombie, what noise is it making? It's moaning.
Yeah.
When you think of a fast, you don't have to imitate it. If you want, please do. When you think of a fast zombie, what noise does it make?
It's like a...
It's kind of growling.
Yeah.
So how does that change up the monster?
They're just scary in a different way. Again, like the slow one is scary because it's dead, and it makes you think about... I think it makes you think about yourself and your loved ones and what happens when you die and how inhuman you become in death. Versus the infected, it's like, oh, this is a scary animal. And again, it's still frightening on the human level because you're looking at it and it looks like a human being, but the eyes are all red and they're not acting like a human. And so that is scary in a more like, this is a creature way, and less in a like, I'm afraid of my own mortality kind of way.
Exactly. It becomes less, I think, of a metaphor. And this is the way I wanted to phrase the question. How do these two type of zombies differ thematically? I can popcorn some ideas that you can latch onto, whatever speaks to you.
Sure.
I think it matters. The fast versus slow zombie is a very different presentation of the themes of death, age, time, and the level of sympathy we feel for the creatures.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, because one of my favorite moments in 28 Days Later, and I guess this is a spoiler, but we've kind of already spoiled the whole thing, so what are you doing?
You've had 23 years?
Yeah.
And yes, it's lost media, but you had one night in theaters to go watch it?
Yeah, you could have done it. Come on. Yeah, because there were years where you couldn't find it, whatever. Brendan Gleeson, when he is infected and he knows he's been infected, that turn happens so fast. He gets the drop of blood in his eye, and within... I would
10
say
to 20 seconds.
10 to 20
That's
seconds.
what Selena says.
Yeah, I would say, I think in the movie, it's probably about 20 seconds. He turns and he knows it's happening. And watching him go from, like trying to calmly say, like tell his daughter that he loves her and to get away from him, and then switching into the anger, it happens so quickly. And there's a good moment in there where you can't tell if he has turned or if he's angry that he's turning, or he's angry that it's happened, or he's angry that his daughter won't get away from him because he's afraid for her. Like, there is a moment in between where you can't tell, and that's really interesting about sort of the divide, because with a slow zombie, with a Walking Dead zombie, there's a clear like divide. It's the death, right? It's like once you turn, it's not a transition. You die and then you come back.
There's an interval.
There's not an in-between moment where it's like purgatory. Like, as in like, it's not a blend, it's a hard line in
There's
The Walking Dead.
There's also makeup. You look very different.
You look different.
I'm thinking I'll only do early spoilers. When Shane comes back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's still John Bernthal. Shout out John Bernthal.
We love him.
But the makeup is very different. He's walking differently. He's moaning instead of talking in that wonderful drawl.
Right.
So it is kind of depersonalized.
Right. Versus in 28 Days Later, there's a moment where you're wondering how human is he still? And that's like so scary and interesting, because when they're talking about the outbreak, when they're kind of like giving the exploitation to Cillian Murphy, they're saying, at first it's like it's rage and it started as riots and like it just seems like people are mad. And then of course it becomes this much larger, more dangerous thing. And of course, anger and rage and rioting are very human things, and they happen all the time, and they're not necessarily a sign of an epidemic. It's just, that's a normal part of humanity. And that's so scary that it's like, where does it become this beyond human thing? Where does it become the animal thing? When do we become the animals? That's a really interesting idea.
A slow zombie makes me think about death. A fast zombie makes me think about our fear of death.
Yes, yes. Or even like about our own flaws,
Sure.
you know?
Yes.
Versus like, I mean, what's interesting about the slow zombie is in a story like The Walking Dead, you're still thinking about humanity's flaws because you're regularly encountering flawed humans, and that makes sense. But it's not, the zombies aren't doing that. It's the circumstances the zombies have created are making you think about that.
And if you noticed in 28 Days Later, I want credit that I haven't once said 30 Days of Night.
I'm really proud of you.
And every time it's like a train with two tracks, and I just keep choosing the right one.
I'm really proud of you.
I loved the mannerisms of the zombies in 28 Days Later, because we're talking about how they feel more animal-like versus a slow zombie, where I'm always aware it's a person. It's a dead human. They move kind of slowly. It's a lot of looking to the side, but in 28 Days Later, it was a lot of cocking their heads.
Yes.
Where it looked almost dog-like.
Yeah,
if you
like
think
dog.
of the first few zombies that Jim sees in the church.
Yes.
That first zombie, that's the father that's walking towards him.
Yeah, that's
they're
great.
reacting like a confused animal.
Yes, very much.
It's very tricky. Do you sympathize more with a fast or a slow zombie?
I don't know. I mean, I really sympathize with both, and that's what's so interesting. Like, because I think with the fast one, I sympathize because it's a human that's become a new thing. Versus the zombies, I feel bad because they have already died. So on the one hand, I don't feel as bad because the human part of them is fully gone, and I'm confident in that. Versus the 28 Days Later zombie, I wonder if there's a part of their regular consciousness in there.
Yeah.
And versus the slow one, I know that they've died, but also it's like, oh, how terrible that, like, that's what I mean, for both of them, they've become this thing, and that's horrible. I don't know which one I feel worse for.
I think there is a capacity for sympathy within the zombie that doesn't really exist in a lot of other creatures, especially classic horror creatures. When you're thinking of a vampire, they feel more human. They feel more conscious and responsible for their actions.
Right, so you don't feel bad for them.
A zombie is kind of just default programming of attacking a food source.
Yeah, there's kind of nothing they can do about it.
Yeah, a zombie is feeding. You know, there's a different level of intention there with a vampire kind of selecting its next meal versus the zombies. I mean, they're on autopilot.
Right, because the vampire is, for most of what I've seen and read, maintains their full consciousness. And all that's happened is they've gained extra power and ability. They haven't, like, their brains haven't been altered. Like, they still recognize right from wrong. They can form relationships. They can know how to keep themselves and others safe. Like, they are fully conscious. And so you don't feel bad for them. Like, you kind of feel bad, oh, that sucks that now you can't ever die and you can't feel warmth or whatever the fuck. But like, you don't feel bad for them the way you feel bad for a zombie because it's not their fault. And that's really interesting. Even though, like, a zombie is much scarier than a vampire.
And honestly, like, if you were just to think of the pantheon, let's say, of the original Universal monster movies, the most sympathetic creature there is absolutely Frankenstein.
Sure.
And Frankenstein is largely a zombie.
He's a reanimated corpse.
Yeah, sorry. No, you go.
No, you're right. The monster is, it's kind of hobbled together, but it's a reanimated corpse. Without his consent, he didn't want this, and he doesn't really know how to be. He doesn't have his old consciousness, you know? So he's this new creature that didn't want to be created.
But in the same way you're talking about, there's a moment when Brendan Gleeson is turning where you don't know if he's human or infected, where it feels like he's traversing, he's kind of passing through the veil right in front of us. Frankenstein kind of gets to go the other way because he starts as this moaning slow zombie, and at least mentally, by the end of the story, he's quite erudite. He's
because he learns,
he's remembering,
he evolves,
he has relationships. So he kind of goes the other way versus the Wolfman, the Invisible Man, Dracula, the Mummy. They're not sympathetic in the same way.
Not really. No, that's really true.
Is Frankenstein a zombie story? Let's throw that question down to the comments.
Yeah, you guys let us know, because that is really interesting. And I wonder if there were any zombie-like stories pre-Frankenstein, you know? Like, that's what I'm wondering about.
I feel like this has got to be one of the most storied types of horror.
Yeah.
Because it's so elemental. It's death. It's just a body.
Sure.
There've always been bodies.
Well, and also I should say in like 19th century vampires were reanimated corpses in a way. So like the idea,
guess.
no, but I'm saying the idea of coming back from the dead has been an idea in our heads for a really long time.
You're not a zombie if you're wearing a collar and an amulet.
No, right. Like the idea has evolved in there too. The vampire and the zombie are very distinct things now for us. But this idea and this interested in fear of coming back from the dead, or like us becoming things that are like us but not quite, that's been around for a long time. So I'd love to know if you guys have any, like, I don't know, cultural deep dives on zombies, or what your favorite kind of zombie is, or what you think of 28 Days Later, or anything that we've discussed. This has been fun. Cool. Sorry, I thought you were going to say something nice.
Oh, no?
I can keep going.
I can shout out something.
Okay, yeah.
If you've already read Walking Dead, if you've watched Walking Dead, if you've watched Last of Us, if you've watched 28 Days Later, I read this horror comic a couple months ago called Pin-Apocalypse.
Yes.
So it's in that glorious 50s pinup style. It is so much fun. You can read it as a webcomic, or it's being released serially in comic shops right now.
Oh, that's cool.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I remember you really liking that. You know what else you can read, dear listener, is Cam's latest book, Lemon Tarts in Space. If you didn't know, Cam's a writer.
Bare minimum. You can read it. It's readable.
It is readable. It has words in it. No, it's a delightful novel. It's a light sci-fi dark comedy. It's like Ridley Scott's Alien meets Monty Python. It is funny and scary and wild and such a delightful time. You can read it as a regular novel, or you can listen to the fully produced audio drama. The links to purchase that are in the description of this episode. Thank you very much for your support.
You can also support the show by checking us out over on Patreon. $2 a month. You can support the show and get our whole back catalog of bonus episodes, including 2 new bonus episodes every month.
Yes.
Last month for May, because it was our 5th anniversary, crazy, we did a bonus episode every single week. So that's 4 episodes just in May. Never mind the years that we've been doing the show.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's all. So yeah, stay tuned for more Summerween stuff coming your way all summer long. We're doing fun, spooky, scary times to celebrate, or really to hide from and disassociate from the horror that is summer, because it is horrible down here in Texas. Cool. Well, we'll catch you guys in a few days. Thank you so much for listening. And I fucked it up.
You can't say
I did it wrong. Oh, thank you guys so much for listening. We'll catch you here in a few days with another brand new episode.